Welcome to Stitches in Time, the podcast discussing Doctor Who the way it was meant to be watched, in chronological order, one clip at a time, starting at the Big Bang and ending with the heat death of the universe. I'm Becca, the Matrix Archivist, and I spent the last 12 years of my life meticulously editing the entire televised Doctor Who universe into chronological order.
And I'm Mandy, and I definitely remember learning the difference between meiosis and mitosis, but don't ask me which one is which.
Yes, and also today we have our very first ever Stitches in Time guest on the show, Ben Paddon. Friend
Hi.
of the show, Ben Paddon.
Hello, hi. I'm Ben, and I am morally and ethically opposed to what you are doing here on this show.
I don't understand.
You're morally and ethically opposed to Doctor Who?
I am morally and ethically for Doctor Who.
See, I would understand if you were morally and ethically opposed to Doctor Who, because I've watched some Doctor Who, and I can understand some moral and ethical opposition.
This is true. I will actually, just to kind of deviate from, I'm going to break kayfabe for a minute to talk about the time that Mandy once made me rate every single story in Doctor Who on a binary of good or bad.
And what did you discover?
I discovered
Benjamin?
that slightly more than half of Doctor Who is bad.
You discovered that Doctor Who is by majority bad.
Listen, whenever you make an omelette, you're gonna break a few heads, and some of the heads in Doctor Who are not good heads and should be broken.
I'm also morally opposed to Doctor Who because they aired it out of order. They aired it in such a weird order.
It was intended. You're one of those people. I guarantee you are one of those people. Can I swear on this show?
Absolutely.
You're one of those fucking people who likes to argue over the correct reading order for the Narnia books. It's the order of publication. And that is exactly the same with Doctor Who. The order that they aired it in is the order you're supposed... This is a travesty, and I won't stand for it, which is why I'm sitting down while we record.
Great. Well, Ben, thanks for being on the podcast. We will talk to you later.
Good to be had. Don't forget to find me on socials.
Benjamin.
Yeah.
Benjamin, can you not understand the importance of seeing things by way of the universe, the way that we understand, as we have previously mentioned, and it's been a couple episodes since I brought it up, we have to understand time by way of our Christian God, which is the way that our calendar is set up.
Yeah. Everything is based on God's birthday.
Well, I will counter with this. Life must be lived forwards, but only makes sense backwards. Therefore, I propose that the correct viewing order for Doctor Who is basically what you've done, but in reverse. So when you finish this podcast, when you get to the end of it, that's how you wind your way back.
Play it back.
Yeah.
Play it back now, y'all.
When we finish this podcast, you will listen to it, the whole thing, but from newest to oldest. Episodes. Yeah.
I think what you do, and I know you can do this because I know you have the tools. I've seen you used, Cam Pro Unregistered 3, so I know that you have the software to do this. You just take the edit that you've done, and then you give it that Missy Elliott spin. You lay that thing down, flip it, and reverse it, and that, I think you'll find is the correct viewing order for Doctor Who.
Do you mean flip it like I also have to have it mirror imaged?
It does have to be mirrored. It has to be a negative image.
Have y'all seen the thing? They used to do screenings of The Shining that way, where they would have it
yes, you told me about
one way played beginning to end, but they would also overlay it with it playing backwards to front. And you get a bunch of weird shit when you play it together. Like, in the opening, credit sprawl, when they have Jack Nicholson, it's him frozen in the ice. And there's all of these, weird the bit where, Shelley Duvall in the opening was yeah, Jack's been having problems. We're good. That's when all the blood and the murder is happening.
Amazing.
That sounds great. We should honestly watch every movie that way.
Yeah.
It was so good. And it was also great going to a screening of it and the bit where it finally converges and you're at the singular moment. And it is the groundskeeper, it's when he's like on the phone in bed and he's like getting the call of like, hey, shit's coming down, you need to actually go to the house and check it because shit's happening. That's the midpoint when it all comes together, just him sitting in bed.
Oh wow. Yeah, why are we recording a podcast? Let's do that.
I saw that before I did weed. I had a high experience with no weed involved. It was before I would do drugs regularly.
It is nice to know that sensation can be created artificially, but it does involve Jack Nicholson.
Look, you can get any sensation through the use of either drugs and or Jack Nicholson.
Any combination there. That's why we are drawn to drill. Anyway, let's continue with the podcast as intended.
So today we are talking about a 4-second clip from The Lie of the Land.
This is a fucking nightmare. Go on.
This is the Peter Capaldi episode.
What is bonkers about this premise, just conceptually, is we have already spent more time on the preamble than we will ever spend watching this clip. Even if you've watched this entire episode multiple times, and I say this as someone who's watched all of Doctor Who multiple times, we will never be able to catch up with having seen this 4-second clip in as much time as we've spent saying, hello, here is a podcast.
That's the importance. We're watching Doctor Who in the proper way because we're giving it the dedication. We're going to spend the time on these 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Because this is not any mere 4 seconds. These 4 seconds are the formation of life as we know it.
Yeah. Do you not like life as we know it, Ben?
I mean, have you seen life lately? You've lived, right?
Yeah, you know what? I have lived, and that's why this clip is such a good throwback to the olden days, how things used to be.
Before it all went wrong.
When single cells were single cells.
Sorry, it genuinely felt like you were going into a sponsored ad just then. Yes, I have lived, and that's why I used Blue Apron. Blue Apron doesn't exist anymore. We ran out of aprons.
I feel like the way I was going into that ad was very much like, that's why I long for the simpler times and the fresh taste of a Lucky Strike cigarette.
Awful. Anyway, 2 cells divide while Peter Capaldi talks about the humani.
They shepherded humanity.
So Ben and I watched this together. I don't feel like we've clarified on this podcast that Ben and I are married.
Yeah,
we
are very married.
This is my wife that we have invited on
Mandy,
to insult our podcast.
Sorry, Mandy, we signed a legal contract. You do have to pronounce it correctly.
I can't do the Borat voice.
You have to say, Moab.
My wife.
There you go. You nailed. No, are you kidding me? You nailed that. That's better than I've ever done. Moab. Yeah, that's why you get married. I can't think of any other reason to like sign those documents with another human being.
Yeah. So Ben and I watched this episode together, I call it an episode. We watched the 4 seconds together. Yeah. I was just referring to it as a voiceover, and then Ben said, yeah, it's Peter Capaldi doing the voiceover. Yeah. It's a Peter Capaldi, it's a Capaldi episode because it's him doing the voiceover. Yeah. It don't sound like him. I don't believe it's him.
It's him, though.
I will grant you it might be a Capaldi. I don't think that it's Pete Capaldi. I think he called a cousin. I think he was a little sick that day.
Is it Louis Capaldi?
You think it was...
Just doing the voiceover for one.
You think it was like when Tom Hanks gets his brother in to do the Woody in the video games?
It's Jim Hanks in Kingdom Hearts 3. And let me tell you, Jim Hanks in Kingdom Hearts 3 still makes me feel a feeling. But it's not the same.
I do want to hear Peter Capaldi do Woody's Kingdom Hearts 3 You've Never Been Loved speech now. I think I need to hear that I need the full Capaldi for that speech.
The hardest line. I know a lot of people don't like Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, they're wrong.
That was the hardest line. That and Donald Duck doing what is canonically like, has the powers of a god, apparently, based on the magic that he was doing in this.
Amazing.
I have to play these Kingdom Hearts games, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot like Doctor Who, by which I mean it doesn't make any sense.
And it has to be played in the wrong order.
Yeah.
If you're thinking you play Kingdom Hearts 1, then 2, then 3, you are already wrong. You're already off the beaten track.
Oh, interesting. What's the
There's
preferred...
like 12 games in between those.
Oh, I see. It's like the Assassin's Creed games. It's like Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, something else, 3, 4, and then they just gave up on the numbers after that.
How Ezio gets his groove back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start, how many games have fractions in them?
Oh, all of them, because you use math to make computers do stuff.
And any real number can be expressed as a fraction.
Yeah. The only game that doesn't have fractions is Countdown.
Any rational number, excuse me.
But that's... don't talk to me about rational numbers.
Y'all are talking about math, but this was clearly an episode about science. This is Becca. I know that you're going to ask me to do the Mandy prediction segment, and Ben for...
I'm sorry, the what? What is it called? What is the name of the segment?
It's called.
You named the segment. It's Mandy's Splaining.
Mandy's Splaining. Okay, It's the Mandy's Splaining segment, and Becca needs to explain the name of the Mandy's Splaining segment because I don't remember it.
Great.
But I'm gonna Mandy-splain what this episode is, because I definitely, again, this is not only an episode that I've seen, this is an episode that Ben and I would have watched back in the early days of us dating.
Yep.
Because, so as I have mentioned on the podcast before, I got into Doctor Who, I fell out of Doctor Who, and then I got back into Doctor Who. Ben is what got me back into Doctor Who, and they were the ones to convince me to actually go back and watch the Peter Capaldi episodes. And I was only watching them because I was into Ben. And that was the Netflix and chill.
Yeah.
Was watching Peter Capaldi. So we've definitely watched this.
Yeah, it was early in the relationship, and you needed to know exactly what flavor of brainworms that I have. And obviously I have like the Kennedy brainworm that came in, ate part of my brain and died, and I filled that space with Doctor Who. Which is the only way to fill a hole in your brain, I think.
Yeah.
That's how I did it.
Yeah.
And so we sat and we watched an episode where the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, I guess I know he was a teacher, and so I think he was like substitute teaching a class, and so he wheeled out the little, like the TV with the VCR, and it was like, we're gonna learn where babies come from. And so we just watched that little science, like the CG segment of like cell splitting.
We're going to learn where babies come from in the most convoluted way possible by talking about all life that has ever existed.
Look, you really got to separate it out, because if you get any closer there, you will, like, the state of Florida will end your life.
That's true. Again, it all comes back to that Christian God of ours.
So they're like, you're just gonna know about cells. It's just that cells split and then a baby happens.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think the next scene is an immediate hard cut to the sperm racing sequence from the beginning of Look Who's Talking. I know what it is. I'm just playing in the space.
So that was very good. Thank you for the Mandy-splaining segment. Ben, would you like to elucidate your wife about what's actually happening? In
in a segment that I'm going to call On the Other Bend. This is from a montage.
You're fired.
Thank you. Yes, with good cause. I'll take my severance check now. Legally, state of California, you do have to give it to me within 24 hours of letting me go. This is from a sequence at the beginning of The Lie of the Land, where the Doctor is, I don't want to say pontificating, but it's because it's definitely a marketing video about why actually the invading monks are so cool and hip and great for the human race.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just one of the shots. And because of the way you have brutally massacred this otherwise basically okay episode of Moffat-era Doctor Who, we're going to see all of these sequences over a period of 50 years out of order.
In order.
Out of
order. Look, we can go back and forth with this all day.
And
So
it's out of order.
I do have...
You are bang out of order.
This clip is a little bit weird because... So I do have a rule. It's one of my many rules in my thorough methodology. If something is from a video clip that's like been edited together, I generally don't include the video clip as a thing that occurs. In the same way I wouldn't just like say, oh, this VHS tape took place in, 1914 just because it's tape one of the Titanic or whatever.
You have to figure out if the bad CG is diegetic or non-diegetic.
Exactly. But I feel like I've started loosening that up a little bit so that if it's representative of a particular time, then I put it in that time just because it's a little more fun that way. So that's what I did here, because this is this clip has the distinction of being fake history within the context of the show because it's propaganda about the monks. It's also real history because the monks aren't like pulling the cells apart themselves. That they're not even there. It's just, this is what happened. And it's also real history because it's also what actually happened on the planet we live on.
Wait, hang on.
Now.
Is this the only bit of this video that makes it into the edit?
No.
Why are the rest of the bits going to pop up in like 3 years into this podcast?
Yeah, but they're going to be sort of false histories or fake because I do include things like deleted timelines.
Oh, that does make sense.
Alternate universes and that kind of thing. So like, felt like it was appropriate to, but they are labeled as such. This one, I don't think this one is labeled. I can't remember if I put the term false history on the super on it, but it's just a single-celled organism in a super ocean. And this is also the first water we're seeing because it's the first water that exists.
Yeah, like we did go from it being like real, again, hot, to now we got, it is surfing
USA.
They got some waves.
The thing that interests me, because I watched the previous two clips with Mandy, even though I wasn't present on the show, I watched those. So you've got the previous segment, which was Matt Smith taking photos on the surface of the Earth like 4 billion years ago, or 6 billion years ago, depending on who you believe, Matt Smith or a scientist. And then you've got cells...
Matt Smith or David Tennant.
Yeah. You have cells dividing. What you've got there is... somewhere over the horizon, Q is showing Captain Picard about the birth of life on Earth from All Good Things, the Next Generation episode.
Ben, would you please do me the honor of editing all of Star Trek into my Doctor Who edit?
See, if you're going to have me to do all of Star... Here's the thing. The first shot of Star Trek in chronological order is from an episode of Star Trek Voyager where a Q sends the ship back to the Big Bang. No, to just before the Big Bang.
So it would start before Stitches in Time.
It would start before Stitches in Time.
The Big Bang.
Yeah, the first shot of Doctor Who Stitches in Time would be Voyager. It's pretty great.
Amazing. This is also, I think... this clip is significant in the sense that I think...
Without it, none of the other characters in the show could have possibly appear.
I don't...
Yeah.
I mean...
I mean,
is
I don't
true.
like the timeless child thing. I don't know whether that was meiosis or mitosis.
I'll tell you
Yeah,
what.
how does regeneration work?
Technically, Universal owns the rights to these cells because these specific cells are the earliest appearance of Dr. Grace Holloway from the Doctor Who TV movie, which presents a legal issue between the BBC. Not that I would say your website creates any legal issues with the BBC or anyone else.
Of course not. Of course not. How could it possibly?
No. Because here's the thing.
As far as Disney is concerned, you don't have a website.
No, I don't have a website. I barely have a last name.
That's
why I introduced myself as Becca the Matrix Archivist.
Here is the thing that tickles me, is that in order for the BBC to prove that you've shared copyrighted information, they would have to watch all of it so that they could provide timestamps. And the BBC is massively underfunded. There's no way they can afford that.
No.
It's not gonna happen.
Sorry.
And all you need to do, Becca, is really just pit them against each other, because there's so many people who's like, no, actually, I own that. The guy's weird son.
Oh, you got
I mean,
a Steph Coburn dilemma, yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
I would argue that I have actually created something new and separate, and I've done enough editing to it that it is a distinct
What
entity.
I did was, I took one episode and I glued it to a bit from a different episode, and in many ways, that's something else.
I mean, as a person who is watching it this way, it sure is different. It's sure unlike the Doctor Who.
Let me explain how different they are. Ben loves one thing with a passion, and me breaking it apart and putting it together differently is something that they're viciously trying to destroy.
Would you then argue that the 97, 2004, and 2011 edits of the original Star Wars trilogy are separate things for that reason? Because they are different things, and people do have strong emotional opinions about them.
But there's a level of significant edit. Like, this is settled in law of the amount of, like, significant edits and, like, stuff that you have to do, where those aren't significant changes.
So here's the loophole then. You have to have every Beatles song playing in the background of Stitches in Time. Start with their classic hit, their classic 1963 hit, I Have a Dog, and just layer all the other ones on top of it.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't possibly know what you mean, Ben. I don't get that reference because I haven't gotten to that episode yet.
That's fair.
I want to ask you, since you are our guest, and you have...
And your wife.
And my wife.
So I say
and
it properly.
You have a very... My wife.
Yep. Go on.
Ben, I can just edit one of those into every single time if you want me to.
You can, but that doesn't mean Mandy doesn't have to say it every time.
Fair.
You have a very strong personal connection with Doctor Who.
Yes.
And part of that personal connection is...
I once punched Stone Cold Steve Austin in the face with a copy of the original one-disc release of the 1996 TV movie starring Paul McGann and Eric Roberts.
No, you didn't. That's a lie.
You're right. It was the 2-disc special edition from 2010. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that.
Yes. One of the things that Doctor Who is very important to you is because you have a personal connection with it, with your dad, with your late father, who I never met.
That's how late he was. He didn't get to our wedding on time.
No.
God damn it.
Never functional. That Peter Paddon. What would your father say about Stitches in Time?
I think my dad would think it was the funniest fucking thing in the world. I think my dad would just have it on in the background with the sound either low or off when he was doing other things. I think that he would be so tickled by this conceptually. I think the fact that he did not live to see it come to fruition is I think that's a worse tragedy than him not getting to see through the Capaldi era, because the last conversation he and I had about Doctor Who, I think it was like 4 episodes into Capaldi, and he was saying how much he wasn't enjoying Capaldi's run so far. And I know he would have loved Capaldi's second and third seasons. And I think I think he would have liked Mummy on the Orient Express. He didn't make it. He didn't make it to that episode. He didn't make it to Dark Water and Death in Heaven. He didn't make it to Last Christmas. So that episode means a lot to me because of what that episode is about. Becky, you will eventually get to that, I'm sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that my dad would be so tickled to A, discover that this exists, B, to discover that I know the broken mind that created it, and C, that there is now a podcast discussing it. I think these are all things that would make this existing is the only thing that makes me wish that there was an afterlife. I want my dad to know this is happening.
All right, so no pressure then for us. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. I'm really happy that you said all those things.
And yet you shit on it so much.
I think it's the worst conceived. There are people who do like chronological order watch-throughs of the MCU, and my reaction to that is, why are you doing this? They keep making new movies. You would have to get partway through one movie, stop the disc, swap the discs out, watch a different part of another movie that came out afterwards or before. Like, the whole concept of doing a chronological order watch through of anything makes my head bleed internally, and I don't like it. And it's like people who insist on starting with A Horse and His Boy for the Narnia books, which is A, categorically the worst book in the series, and B,
as we have discussed previously on this podcast.
Yes.
We fucking talked about A Horse and His Boy.
And B, it's
I
Narnia.
can never get past.
It's Narnia. Read a better fucking book. Terry Pratchett has 47 books. Read any of those.
What order should we read those?
Here's the thing, though. If you're saying that The Horse and the Boy is where you start, because we're gonna fucking talk about Chronicles of Narnia again, because I had the book set, and the book set definitely came in not publication.
Yeah,
order.
I also had that book set. I think it might have been my sister's actually, but yeah.
It did not start like Horse and His Boy was like the fourth one or the fifth one.
Oh, interesting.
I can't remember.
Yeah, our set, Horse and His Boy, was the first book in the set.
No, I'm gonna be looking this up, because what was the first one? The first one was this very weird one.
The Lion, the Wizard, and the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the actual first one. That's the first one that was published.
Yeah, but in the collection that I had, it was like I think when I say the second one, the first one, it was this kid, and he just goes to a place where there's a bunch of pools. There's just a bunch of pools, and then each of the pools is a universe, and he's like, that's weird. And that's the book.
Was it The Magicians? Because that sounds a lot like The Magicians, from what I've seen of the Netflix show.
The only book series that I would say you are allowed to read out of order is the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, and that's because it has like sub-series within the thing. I know a lot of people will say don't start with The Color of Magic. I love The Color of Magic. I think it's basically what if Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a fantasy instead of...
What if The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was bad?
It's not Pratchett's strongest. I still like reading it first when I do my read-through, but I also know what's coming later. Like, I think I made the mistake of telling Mandy to start with The Color of Magic. I think...
No, you didn't, because I had read that in college.
Monstrous Regiment, I think I threw at you, or
yeah.
Mort.
Monstrous Regiment.
It's a good book. That's a great book. Becca, have you read Monstrous Regiment?
I have not yet read any of the Discworlds.
Monstrous Regiment would be a perfect book for you to start with.
Okay, I do actually. That's a good, fun one to start with.
Yeah.
Because I had gone to you, Ben, because I had told you, oh, hey, people said that I should read Discworld books. I said, where should I start? And they're like, you can start anywhere, but don't start at the beginning. It was like, you can't tell me anywhere. That's not a starting point. And people do the same shit with Doctor Who. They're like, you can start anywhere, but don't start at the beginning.
Well, obviously you should be starting with the Big Bang and working your way forwards.
Yeah. Also, I do want to, the book set that I have, it started in the Chronicles of Narnia. It started with Magician's Nephew. And that one is apparently a prequel and presents Narnia's origin story of how Aslan created the world.
No, go away. Get out of here.
And apparently it was a bunch of weird fucking pools.
Not the Big Bang? I'm very confused.
I mean, there might have been a bang.
More like a whimper, am I right? Oh.
Well, that's all I have to say about Doctor Who, The Lie of the Land. Ben, where can people find you on the internet?
Great question. I can be found on most social media platforms as Ben Paddon or benpaddon.net on Blue Sky. I'm also on TikTok as Ben Paddon. I make a science fiction comedy audio drama series called Jump Leads. It is a fun romp about two trainees and a sort of self-appointed reality police who go on their first field training exercise and everything goes sideways. The first season dropped last year. I'm currently producing a second season, which should hopefully be dropping later this year.
You're working on a second season. I wonder who you might be writing. So
I might have one of the script editors and one of my co-writers might be on this very podcast.
Oh my gosh. Jeff, you haven't said much today. Do you want to...
Every time Mandy says my wife, that's actually Jeff getting it in the dub.
Oh, poor Jeff.
But yeah, you can find Jump Leads in whatever podcasting app. This podcasting app that you're in now, you could find Jump Leads. Listen to it. It's good.
It's so good.
Idiot.
As someone who is Ben's wife and was fully prepared when you first gave me the script I was fully prepared to have to be polite about it. It's legitimately good.
That's awesome. That's wonderful.
Hooray!
And it is legitimately good. And I say that as someone who's married to neither of you.
Give it time.
I'd like to dedicate this episode to Ben's father. I hope he's out there in the cosmos listening to this somehow.
Dividing cells and talking about the birth of humanity.
Thanks for listening to Stitches in Time. Music by Becca the Matrix Archivist. Art by Mandy Akendo. Logo by Ben Paddon. Email us at matrixarchivist@gmail.com.
Can you imagine the sort of conversation you'd had if you had picked a podcast partner who actually knew about Doctor Who? You'd be talking about Blu-ray edits.
Look, the reason this podcast exists is because I asked both of you at Gallifrey, and Ben was like, Mandy should do this.
I think it's funnier for Mandy to do it.
And it absolutely is.
Amazing.